Communities. My name is Fergus Devitt. I'm the Director of what's called Active Communities Division in the Department for Communities. Ian unfortunately couldn't be here this morning, so I'm a late replacement of the subs bench. And I'm delighted to be here at Kingspan with you all this morning.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, I'm delighted to have been asked to host the first ever sports safety conference at the Kingspan Stadium. Many of you today here have worked with me in the past as a sports journalist in Northern Ireland. Please welcome Andy Murphy.
Looking at designing a large-scale operation for an event, regardless of what the setting is, I want to talk, maybe just get you thinking along some of the ideas of the type of logistics in the back office and the back of house requirements that puts one of those people in a yellow jacket out the front that we all see. So the student experience, to be honest, is varied. It's often seen as a low-value profession. Organisers often think about security and steward after the event concept. So it's always the one where the budget is most squeezed.
So our next speaker, ladies and gentlemen, is Dr. David McManus, the Medical Director for the Northern Ireland Ambulance Service.
Really, my connection with pre-hospital emergency medicine, and hence my career, started with motorcycle sport way back in 1982, which is a long time ago, and we have developed a very experienced medical team and medical service working with St John Red Cross, Order of Malta and so on, and the statutory emergency services at our motorcycle events, working very often in very difficult environments, plying our trade, and we have to work out what we need and how we're going to deploy it.
Our next speaker has flown in from Scotland. His name is Brian McNeil from Systechnica Limited. He's a technical specialist in the field of asset protection from identified vulnerabilities, emerging threats and future threats.
Good morning. Hope everybody's still enjoying themselves. This is where it takes a turn for the worst. And that sounds very interesting, Denise, that introduction. It really just means that we're all doomed to failure and we're going to be seriously injured, and then we'll need the services of David over there when these unmanned aircraft start landing on top of us and chopping us up into little pieces. We started to educate people, and that's what today's all about, is education, working together, understanding the risks and understanding what you need to do when you're planning your event, just to consider what happens if someone flies their aircraft over your sporting venue, whether it's motorsport or it's a rugby or it's a football or a pop concert. It doesn't really matter what it is. It's a large public venue, and flying unmanned aircraft over these sort of things is fraught with problems. So let's have a wee whiz through. I'm going to try and catch up some of the time, Denise, because we're running on a wee bit, and I know everybody is. I hear the stomachs rumbling and stuff. You'll probably not want lunch by the time I'm finished with you, but we'll get to that. So anyway, let's talk about unmanned aircraft. Small unmanned aerial vehicle. Basically, a little machine with some propellers on it, or wings, that flies through the air and it doesn't have...
So, the afternoon session will start with Jeff Wilson. Jeff's a sports strategist, sports marketing expert, FIFA consultant, UEFA A coach, Tourism NI board member, and a part-time lecturer at Queen's University in Belfast.
So I think, from our point of view, when we decided, and only was recently, we decided to sort of put our brand out there, and we decided, okay, let's look at our brand, and we got a letter from a solicitor, and the solicitor says, sorry, you can't register the name of the Ulster Grand Prix. And we went, what? Who is that? And we found out who the solicitor was, and it was a solicitor for Bernie Ecclestone. Now you think from a safety point of view, trying to manage all of 7.4 miles, not only from spectators, but also from the riders themselves. 18 people go out per group. For those who know, the TT is a time trial, and they go off one by one. No, we don't. There is 1,600 safety bails, just a slight issue. Or slight thing, I see some guys in from the Northern Ireland amalgamation. Northern Ireland played Wales, and somebody put out, hey, about Gareth Bale being played, and we put out a tweet, you have only one bail, we have 1,600.
Our next speaker is Professor Clifford Stott. Clifford Stott is Professor of Social Psychology at Keele University in Staffordshire.
We've heard a lot today about the logistics of managing an event. And I think the last presentation was built around when you get those logistics right, you build a successful event, but the success of that event is measured by the size of the crowds that you're dealing with. And our assumptions are that in a situation like that, a mass emergency, a crowd might start to panic. And we have this notion of mass panic. And we also, if we think about violence and riots, we tend to think about mob psychology. And this idea that crowds are places where we kind of lose it a little bit, that our brains stop working, that we stop being normal people and we become part of the mob. Either we panic or we can become violent and confrontational.
Now, who can forget the summer when we all dared to dream, as Northern Ireland did us proud at the European Championships in France? All great memories. And our next speaker was right at the centre of this tournament. Superintendent Nigel Goddard is an experienced PSNI public order commander.
My job in France was to lead a small team of officers. Each of the countries that participated in the Euros was asked to provide a team of officers. It's done European and worldwide in relation to all sort of international and European football competitions. And to do it, we developed a strategy which I will take you through very briefly, and then I'll talk to you briefly about what we did when we were there and what some of the issues were. Taking the successful neighbourhood policing model, which we've used for many years and was recommended under Patten, which emphasises problem solving, making decisions collaboratively with our partners, being transparent and visible and accountable in all that we did, so sharing all the information that we had throughout with our supporters groups, and we'll come on to talking about working with the amalgamation shortly. And if we did all that, we believed it would increase the chances that our role would be seen as fair and legitimate.
It's been an absolutely marvellous conference. It's the first of its kind in Northern Ireland, and I think the fact that there was such a wide aspect from all the speakers bringing various facets of safety, I think has really made it very stimulating and made us think about how we organise and think about events in the future.